I don't know whether you've noticed I'm going to have to plug my phone in a bit because my battery is really low. I don't know whether you've noticed from some of my other videos when I move the camera around my room, I do actually have decks. Now, I used to be into DJing years back, from my late teenage years through my 20s. And when I was younger, I was more into dance music. I've always been a rocker at heart. I was a rocker when I was very young, and then when the whole rave scene kind of blew up in the UK, I got into the whole house, acid and drum and bass and all that stuff. Was into all that for years. Got into DJing in my late teens, went to a few raves, got into the whole DJing scene and got myself some Gemini decks. When I got to about my late teens, I did start to get into the more kind of experimental stuff. Huge fan of Aphex Twin, really got into the Orbital and just stuff that was really out there, and yeah, just stuff that was kind of underground and experimental. See, there's so many different subgenres out there now. Dance music has really just split into so many different genres. When I was a teenager, there was loads of different stuff coming out. You had trance, techno, tech step, the breakbeat stuff. House really got big. You had all the down-tempo experimental stuff that started to get big. There's lots of underground stuff that was coming out, but which could really be only found on record. Breakbeat stuff, new school, everything from underground acid to techno and drum and bass and everything in between. I became a huge fan of all of it, and I started to really go out there and hunt for music. I started to appreciate the hunt a lot more than I did in my early teenage years. When I was younger, I used to just listen to what everyone else was listening to, and it wasn't until I got to about 17, 18 that I started to really get into like this collecting this collecting culture and getting out there and finding the rare stuff and finding the good stuff that it's the stuff that no one's really heard of, and it's the non-commercial, non-mainstream. I'm hugely into music as much as I'm into films, and I can talk for hours about music, and I probably will in some of my other videos as well. But I'm just mentioning it today because I bought a record and some CDs, so I'm talking a bit more about my music. But I'm not actually going to go. I wasn't planning on going into great detail because I have got a huge record collection, but I wasn't planning on doing my records on these collection videos. I might do one or two. I might, if I come across some good stuff, if I come across some good records and that they're kind of in with what I've bought on that day, I might mention them. I've got some good records, you can see up there. I've got the film stuff, The Shining soundtrack, Fright Night. I might possibly talk about them. Yeah, so basically, I started getting into the more underground stuff, the more abstract stuff. Yeah, like the stuff on independent labels, the stuff that's a bit more homegrown, the stuff that's by independent producers. I started to go out and look for white labels and rare stuff that you can't really get anywhere and you don't hear every day. Yeah, basically the kind of labels, the kind of stuff I was looking for, the kind of labels were like Joint Venture, Warp Records, artists like Square Pusher and a different trip-hop type stuff. Yeah, underground musical subgenres, you know, such as ambient stuff, dark ambient, different kind of like chill out music, electronica. Then I started getting into the more industrial type stuff. I know dubstep is absolutely massive now. It has been for many years now. So yeah, I've started getting into that, but I got into that a lot more recently. In my mid-20s, I actually really started to get into rock music and metal again, and I started getting into the nu metal scene, which I came into it a bit later on. I know it got really big in the late 90s and early 2000s, but I kind of jumped onto that kind of bandwagon a bit later on, when a lot of the stuff had already hit big, and nu metal was dying out a bit by the time I got into it. But yeah, I got into it, and I still listen to some of the other stuff. Well, I still did. I listened to all of it. I went through a bit of a phase of listening to nothing but rock music and metal, reminiscing back to my teenage years, because I was a real grunger when I was younger. But and I was into like Nirvana and stuff like that, and there was lots of bands around at the time: Soundgarden, L7, Alice in Chains. I was a big fan of that type stuff when it was big in going back years in the early 90s, and then I kind of got back into it all again and started listening to the older stuff, plus some of the new stuff as well, stuff like Korn and Slipknot, System of a Down, Deftones, all that type of Alien Ant Farm, all the nu metal groups that were big. And I did the same kind of thing. I went out and I hunted for the underground stuff, the stuff that no one else had ever heard of, the stuff that was not that commercial, not that kind of mainstream, but still in the know, still known by people. Really got into Skindred, Drowning Pool. There's hundreds, I could go on for hours about this stuff. Basically, I listen to a lot of different types of music. I mean, people do say, oh, I'll listen to anything. I don't just listen to anything. I do have certain specific genres that I stick to. I mean, music today, it all does cross over anyway. It is beginning to all merge together, everything. I mean, back in the early days, people used to listen to, you was either into one thing or another. It was very tribal. You were either a rocker, or you were a raver, or you was into hip-hop. I think it's all kind of merged together now. You've got rockers that are ravers, and you've got bands that are cross over the boundaries. Stuff like Pendulum, Prodigy, they did it first, obviously. Chase and Status. I know you have groups like that playing at the Rock Festival Download that used to be Monsters of Rock. It's all crossed it over, and you've got Korn doing dubstep stuff. Well, I love it. I think it's brilliant, And there's certain scenes out there. There's certain goth scenes and industrial scenes that they do play a mixture. They play a collective. They play an eclectic mix. I've been in clubs where they've gone from nu metal, they've gone from death metal to, industrial EBM to drum and bass in like an hour, and like those kind of clubs are brilliant. It's all very versatile, and it's the type of scene that I like. I like to think that that's where music's going, where you're not pigeonholed, you're not kind of put in a box, and it's all kind of there for the taking, really. And it's whatever your imagination allows you to do, you just do it, go for it. It's why should there be a limit to what you could do? I don't think there's any boundaries, really. You can listen to what you like, you can play what you like, you can combine different styles, genres. This is what it's about, and that's why there's so many different kind of subgenres in this day and age. People are always bringing different genres together, and there's so many kind of fusions out there that it's just the possibilities are endless, basically.